This week's episode is in partnership with Intact Insurance, here for you and for everything you care about.
Well, there's that old familiar tune that we just love to hear, Caitlin, week after week after week. You are listening to, you just tuned in, you have found us, and you are a captive audience. This is the Jann Arden podcast. I'm here with Caitlin Green, and Adam Karish is in his basement suite somewhere engineering this, and we're here. And it feels good to see you guys. We are Zooming right now, people. So we've got each other up on video chat. So it's kind of like being in the studio in Toronto. And we are recording our audio for this show for all of you. So welcome. How's it going, everybody?
I'm doing okay. I'm here next to my co-host, the toilet again.
Oh man, we'll post a picture so you guys can look on it at Twitter. Oh my God, my dog has been so good. Mitty!
I think she knows when we record. I'm convinced that Mitty knows that you're busy doing something, and so she wants to interrupt and get her little voice on the show.
Well, the thing of it is, I don't know what the temperature is there, but it's minus 17 in Calgary today.
Oh my gosh, Jan.
Yeah, so it's just not the greatest, I think. Having these long drawn out winters has exacerbated the whole idea of kind of being in your house. I think when the weather does warm up right across the country, we are really going to see attitudes brighten up. I think people will feel a little more optimistic. Listen, there is nothing in this world like vitamin D. Sunshine, blue skies. You know, even though parks will probably remain closed for the uncertain future, I think just people being able to sit on their decks or on their yards or on their balconies with sun shining at them will really bring a lot of optimism. And I'm looking forward to that. It has been a long winter. When I looked at the temperature today, Caitlin, I was like, really?
Yeah, I find that's just not fair. Toronto isn't, I mean, we've had warmer days so far, but it's 8 degrees here today. It's super sunny. We're in for
above?
8 above. I know, 8 above, Jan, if you can believe it. But it's sunny and it does help because even when I'm not going outside, like I'm not going to my balcony quite yet. And today I don't know if I'll do a walk. I might at some point, but just having the sun shine into your place to even sit in a spot of sun like a house cat.
Yeah. No, I just, it'll make a big difference. But what are we on? Are we on week 3 basically, guys? Is that where we are?
This is week 3. Yeah.
So, and we were talking a little bit about this just pre-record, that we were kind of presented with this idea of, you know, the 14-day quarantine, the 14-day self-isolation. And I think the people at the top of the people that are making these decisions for us, thank God for them. But I'm pretty sure that they were like, we can't tell them it's going to be 3 months at least.
At least.
And that was smart because we already saw panic buying. We already saw people, you know, and rightly so. These are such uncertain times and we've got nothing to compare it to. We don't have a roadmap. We don't have anything. So, but I feel like me personally, I'm settling in. I am settling into a new routine. I'm settling into, but I'm by myself out here with the dog. I'm not feeding a family of 5. I know my situation is different.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. I feel I'm in a different position than my friends who have children who are actively hiding in their bathrooms from their own kids and not telling their youngest kids that it's their birthday because they can't deal with having to do a birthday celebration. So they're just pretending it's not happening and waiting until this is over to throw a party. But I'm in the same kind of boat where it's just my husband and I. So we don't have to cook for 5. I'm not dealing with childcare and trying to educate my kids all day. So I know that I'm in a lucky position when it comes to just the ease of being able to stay at home. So I've kind of settled into it a little bit too. I mean, I miss seeing my mom. I miss seeing grandparents and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
That part's hard, but I worry a little bit here in Toronto. I worry about the warm weather because nothing brings people out of their caves when they're supposed to be in their caves like some sunshine. And a lot of dummies here in Toronto haven't gotten the message that social distancing doesn't mean you can stand 6 feet apart for 2 hours in a park. You're supposed to keep it moving.
Well, what will happen is they will have to put in place more stringent guidelines, or take those measures where literally they have a security force, or even some of the armed forces kind of enforcing that. You can't, sorry, you 10 guys cannot be here playing soccer.
Have you heard about anybody being ticketed out in Calgary or pulled over?
No, we're not as bad out here. I have a feeling it's because we did not deal with the insurgence of so many international flights bringing people home. Although we are an international airport, obviously Vancouver, Toronto bear the brunt of much of that travel. People hit those ports and then they take another flight in.
Yeah.
But I think that's why, and what, Greater Toronto has 10 million people?
Yeah.
Vancouver, you're dealing with millions and millions of people in that valley area. And Calgary, we're kind of sitting in the middle of, the prairies. And we have 1.5 million here, but we're super spread out. This is not a walking city. Calgary is not a walking city. It is it's a driving city. Like, if you want to go somewhere in Calgary, you drive. And we don't have we don't have a lot of people living downtown. Like, we've really tried to build on that, but it's nothing like Toronto, Vancouver.
Yeah. And we have so many people here who do still have to go to work. And so they're going in every day. And it's the people who are working from home, but it's like they're practicing social distancing from the hours of 9 to 5. And then 5 o'clock hits, and all of a sudden, Bathurst, I have friends who live in condos along Bathurst, and they're posting videos of everyone, just out going for a regular stroll. And I get that everybody wants a certain semblance of normalcy, but when you see a major street in Toronto packed with people, you just get the sense that everyone's not getting it. I have a girlfriend who's a real estate agent, and she's on a Facebook group for realtors, and someone posted a story about a cop was pulling over vehicles, random stop, and issuing tickets because when they asked for IDs of everybody in the car, if they found out you were sharing the vehicle with someone who wasn't residing at the same address as you, then they gave you this massive fine. And I thought, good. Because why? I mean, look, it's one thing if you're a taxi or an Uber driver and you're responsible for providing transportation. If you're just cruising around with your friends in a car, not the time.
Yeah. We don't understand the behavior of the virus. We don't understand the gestation period. We don't understand how it presents on people that are asymptomatic. We don't know if, some people, much like many other things throughout history, are carriers of things, but they cannot get it themselves. So when you have someone saying, but I feel great. I mean, I'm sitting here telling you I feel great too. I'm sure Adam feels great. I'm sure you feel great.
Yeah.
But I've also stayed out of harm's way. I'm pretty sure I don't have anything, but I don't know. I travel nonstop. On the 7th of March, I flew back from the Bahamas. I don't think there's still anything in the Bahamas, but I had a corporate job down there. So for me, until someone tells me it's A-okay, I'm going to stay where I am. There's a little grocery store out by me that if I have to, I will go and grab some things. But honestly, I'll tell you right now, I'm really good for a couple of weeks here. And I'm trying to keep busy. I'm being creative. I'm really working on my mental health. I know it's a battle, but if my mother's Alzheimer's taught me anything, and it taught me a lot, but my takeaway from my entire experience with my mom for 10 years of that god-awful disease, stay in the day. Stay where you are. Stay in the moment. I don't think about what I'm going to do tomorrow. I don't think about how long is this going to be. I don't think about, is this how things are going to be forever? I don't. I stay in the moment. I find something good on TV. I read a book. I, putter out in the yard when it's not minus 17. But we cannot live in a future. And we cannot live in a future when things are great and well and perfect and dandy and everything's tickety-boo. It still does not behoove anyone to live in a day that is not yet here. So
Yeah.
that's my recommendation. My mom, there was no moment. There was no yesterday. There was no future. There was only where my mom was. And when I learned to be there with her, I really found a piece of myself that could cope.
And living in the moment and living in the present, being present in your own life instead of always planning, 2-3 weeks ahead is such a valuable lesson to learn at any time. So maybe the way that you were kind of forced to learn this through dealing with what your mom experienced, now maybe we're all kind of being forced to adopt that mentality together just out of self-preservation. Because I personally, I can't imagine a month from now. I don't know what that's going to look like. And I kind of don't want to. So I'm just trying to plan my, my meal for today. And I treat every day that I don't have to leave the house like a success, which is weird. But yeah, it's a good coping mechanism.
But it is difficult to say to any of us, don't worry, or worry is part of it. It's part of our humanity is to worry about things. But, having said that, and I know it's not fair to kind of compare to other things in the world. Like a lot of people have referred to the 1918 Spanish flu that took so many lives. But I'm going to do that anyway, because this could be a much more fierce virus. The mortality rate, even though that's terrible, is still in some countries 5 or 6%. In Canada right now, we're holding steady at 1-ish. But we just have to be mindful that the people that are in charge of this whole thing are doing the best they can, and they're giving us the best advice that they can from moment to moment. But anyway, we're gonna come back and we're gonna lighten up a little bit. We're gonna talk about all the great things, and there are so many great things that are coming out of this experience, this unbelievably human experience. You are back listening to the Jann Arden podcast. I'm picturing everybody in their pajamas. I can safely say that everyone's in their comfy clothes. I bet everyone's got sweatpants that have a few different kinds of stains on them, perhaps at this point. I was looking at a thread on Twitter the other day where there was people posting pictures of their sweatpants, and we were playing Identify the Stains. So, that's pretty funny.
I treated myself. I ordered some new loungewear that was on sale. I thought, why not? I'm not buying anything nice. I'm not putting on hard pants for probably another month. So I just ordered a bunch of loungewear and thought, like, my online ordering is now very, very different. Everything you're seeing make this weird comeback, all the home workout devices, because nobody can go to the gym. So the variations on the Thigh Master are going to come back. Ab rollers are a thing now. So I'm trying to order the ankle weights and a big thick yoga mat so I can try to do some mat routines at home, because there's going to be a lot more of me to love come June.
Well, the at-home Thigh Master, you just put a can of tomatoes between your knees and waddle around the house.
Yeah, not a bad idea.
That's all you have to do. My God, your ankles are going to be like steel. I did a yoga lesson last week, 4 or 5 days ago. I loved it. It was my regular instructor, Jessica, that usually comes out here to the house. Anyway, we just did it on, she says, this is the first time I've ever done a yoga class online. So I'm seeing a ton of that, which I love. Love some of these videos where you see houses kind of backed into a cul-de-sac and everyone's backyard is kind of facing them. And they're out, 40 feet apart from each other. And there's a woman on a megaphone saying, and 5, and 3, and 2. And I love that. So there's sure some innovative ways of people socializing that still respect the physical limitations that we have right now.
Yeah. And they're trying to stay active. There's a couple, I feel like they're celebrities now all of a sudden. So it's these two guys, and they live across the street from my condo building in a townhouse. And they've been going out onto their balcony and tidying up their little balcony and doing their mat routines. And they have neon orange mats. And I swear to you, the entire, 100 units of my building facing their balcony must be watching them like it's a TV show. We're like, oh, I'm like giving them names. I'm like, oh, Matt and Ben are out there again.
Matt and Ben, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on the show when this is all over. If you are the two guys with the bright neon orange mats,
yeah,
we're calling out to you. Just drop us a tweet at the Jann Arden podcast, and we'll find you. We will have you as guests on this show.
Now, Matt, as I've named him, is kind of the instructor of the two, and the other one like follows his lead. I was thinking he could be doing a full video for our building at the very least. Like, this guy's fit.
Oh, Lordy.
I just watch him while I'm eating my pan of brownies and think that's my workout.
What are you doing to stay fit over there? Like, I think you mentioned that you and your husband walked.
Yeah, that's about it. I'm not as good as he is. He actually had this routine that a friend passed along to him. So he sets a timer on his phone, and every 20 minutes it goes off and he gets up and does, whether it's squats or lunges or push-ups or something, so that at the end of a period of hours during the workday, he hasn't just sat down and he'll say, I managed to do 200 push-ups today or however many lunges. Wow. And I have not been doing that, but that's just because I wake up so early. We did the stairs actually, because we were on the 7th floor. So we were doing the stairs a lot. And then our condo board told us they sent out an email asking everyone to please not use the stairs as exercise, just use it for coming and going. Cause we actually have a confirmed case in our building.
Oh,
yeah. So I thought, well, there goes the stairs. So I guess I'm going to have to just go outside and I don't know, maybe do laps around the building that, parks are closed. Like, we're in the intense period, I think, here in the city for the next few weeks. So I think I'll have to take up running outside. Oh, I'm not very good at that.
Well, I think walking, Caitlin, is fine. I think people are much too hard on themselves right now. That whole idea of, I need to write my novel. I need to write a concerto. I need to write a play. I need to, I don't know, design my masterpiece of a painting. And I think doing nothing is actually doing a lot, because within nothing, I don't want to sound too wacko. I'm not sleeping under, a pyramid dome or anything, but I think doing nothing requires a lot of quietness, to sit still. And none of us are used to that. I was saying to a friend of mine, this is the longest stretch that I've been home 22 days today in 20 years.
Like
20 years. So I travel 250 days a year.
And I would see your schedule, and it is truly wild. It is insane, trying to figure out time. When can we connect with Jan? Is she going to be recording from her hotel room? How are we going to make it work? And you're everywhere. And I certainly know for myself, I get addicted almost to being busy, always talking about how busy you are. And every time I had a spare moment, I would instantly book it up with a dinner with a friend or seeing my parents and this has kind of been, it's like a little bit of in a weird way, a vacation from my own habits. It's a vacation from myself, which is kind of cool.
Well, you were telling me earlier about Larry David from Curb Your Enthusiasm and Seinfeld. You were telling me about more or less a PSA. So we've got a couple minutes. Tell people kind of what his messaging was. And we've heard variations of it, but it is quite funny.
It's great because he's, sort of this cranky figure, and he really embraces that side of himself. So I think it was the governor of California was sharing this PSA that he had done, where he says all the people who are complaining about, being home. He said, you idiots, the ones that are still out and complaining about being on your couch, you're missing out on one of the greatest joys. We're finally being told to just sit at home on your sofa, watch TV and eat snacks. I mean, how hard is that? And I think that's just such a good way to look at it, because we always talk about not having enough time. And I wish I could just chill out. And I wish I just could watch my shows. And hello, we finally can right now.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it really does go to show you. And for me, especially, I'm the first person to say I was doing too much, which I really enjoyed, but I think I was missing out on a lot of really important things in my life by racing around. What I'm hoping is that when we come out of this, and we absolutely will, we just have to err on the side of caution. That's what we're seeing happening right now. We can't just go, oh, this is, seasonal. These things happen. Yeah, it's going to wipe out 400,000 people. That's nature, blah, blah, blah. All these idiots that speak like that are the ones that are out, probably playing basketball with 40 other sweaty guys. But we want to just err on the side of caution and put this thing to bed. So I just I want to slow down. I hope we don't go back to that normal, to that bar in which we set for ourselves, which is just go, 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 go. Anyway, we are going to be right back with Ziya Tong. And I think, don't miss this, guys, because Ziya has a book called The Reality Bubble. I could list off a million things that are her credentials, but don't miss this. She's so interesting, and she's got lots of very sciencey things to add to this conversation today. So come back to the Jann Arden podcast right after this. Well, there's so many things that I want to say, but I'm not going to waste any of our time with my next guest on me running through her very long list of accolades. I'm with Ziya Tong. Her book, The Reality Bubble, is something that you absolutely have to read. And that's all I'm going to say. You can Wikipedia Ziya. Hi, welcome to the Jann Arden podcast.
Jann, it's so good to see you over the internet. I just wish I could see you in person.
Well, we will get to that. Listen, I'm going to ask you a question, and then there's a poem that you want to share with us. But just right out of the gate, I want to ask you, what does history tell us about viruses like this?
Well, history tells us that we're going to get through this because human beings have gone through many viruses, many diseases, many different pandemics. This has happened many times over. And even the measures that we're seeing today, these social distancing measures, the isolations, the quarantines, they date back to even before the Black Plague of the 1600s, right? At that time, people had a big red cross that was actually painted on their doors. And even people who were dying then, a lot of people, about 100,000 people in London, the people who were dead in the streets were not allowed, their loved ones were not allowed near them at the time. And even when you flash forward to, say, 1918, the Spanish flu, which affected a lot of people, even here in Canada, about 55,000 people died from the Spanish flu. Even then, Canadians at that time, we had shut down our shops, we had shut down, theaters, restaurants, all those sorts of things to ensure that there was the safety and the social distancing. And the good news part of it is it worked. There was actually a recent study that looked at this and looked at different cities, and the ones that actually engaged in the social distancing in a more complete way actually came out of it in a better state, a lot faster and a lot more robust than the ones that didn't. So if history teaches us anything, it's that we will get through this, and we're doing the right thing now. We're doing what has been done in the past.
Absolutely. History does tend to repeat itself, but it's pretty consistent in how it repeats itself usually. It's like, oh, you're here again. Listen, you talked about wanting to share a poem with us, and I want to get to that right away because I do want to inspire people today. You're the perfect guest to do that. So who are you going to be reading today?
So I came across this poem, and I just think it's beautiful. It's called Small Kindnesses by Danusha Lameri. I think I'm pronouncing her name right. It's not a very long poem, but I'll read it for you if that's okay. I don't read like a poet. I'm just going to read it like I would read it to you as a friend, right?
That's how poems should be read. They should just be read the way you speak. Yeah, okay, we don't need you to be from Stratford.
Okay, so Small Kindnesses, Danusha Lameri. I've been thinking about the way when you walk down a crowded aisle, people pull in their legs to let you by, or how strangers still say bless you when someone sneezes, a leftover from the bubonic plague. Don't die, we're saying. And sometimes when you spill lemons from your grocery bag, someone else will help you pick them up. Mostly, we don't want to harm each other. We want to be handed our cup of coffee hot and to say thank you to the person handing it, to smile at them and for them to smile back. For the waitress to call us honey when she sets down the bowl of clam chowder, and for the driver in the red pickup truck to let us pass. We have so little of each other now, so far from tribe and fire, only these brief moments of exchange. What if they are the true dwelling of the holy, these fleeting temples we make together when we say, Here, have my seat. Go ahead, you first. I like your hat.
Oh, man.
Isn't that beautiful? Because it's true. We treasure so much these little moments of these gentle kindnesses. And I think that that's really what's going to build this resilience and this sense of community as we start to come out of it, is those little moments, those kind gestures. And truth be known, what Canadians are very well known for. You know, in the recent era, we started seeing some of this nastiness, a different kind of plague besetting our mindsets and our communities, right? Cruelty and racism. But I think all of us love kindness, and we love goodwill. We love animals. We love nature. All these things that we actually love and appreciate, we're starting to see right now. So I just wanted to share that with you because I think it speaks to the moment that we're in right now.
Simple sentiment, pulling your knees in to let somebody go by. Canadians are constantly saying, I'm sorry, which is wonderful. You know, if you kind of even almost bump, excuse me, somebody in a grocery store, you're like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And you're like, but now I think the appreciation, the depth of our gratitude for spatial closeness, to be sitting in a theater watching a music program or a movie or something and sitting shoulder to shoulder with strangers with comfort and not thinking that it could kill you. I think, that's the hard part. I was watching a movie yesterday. Well, ironically, the movie was called Yesterday. It was really cute about Beatles music. I know. It's such a great movie. I recommend you seeing it. It's very uplifting. But anyway, it was all these crowd scenes at Wembley Stadium with 20,000 people. And I was like, are we going to get back to that?
Well, I think we definitely will, just as we were talking about history has shown us that we always do. I just hope just with a new form of appreciation, you know, like I even miss elbow bumps now. That was one of the last things that we were all doing together. It seemed so absurd to bump somebody's elbows instead of shake their hands. And I've always been a hugger. I know that there are some of the non-huggers out there that are like, phew, I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore. But for me, you know, I'm really going to relish it. And I think that there's going to be a tremendous sense of joy and reunion when we get to meet up again.
Sharing a meal.
Yeah. How are you doing that right now? I know that some people are getting together on Zoom and having meals and setting up candles and single place settings. Or, you know, I know that it's easier to have a dinner party when you're just cleaning up for one, that's for sure, for two or whatever.
Yeah, I have been really keeping in touch with my friends. We started an iMessage thread. There's, I think, 6 of us on there. We check in the mornings. There's a few of us that are on our own, and there's a few of us that are with our families. But I feel more connected now than I did, 2 months ago, because I'm hearing from people constantly that I haven't heard from. My friends in California, my friends in New York, my friends in the UK. My friend Nigel in the UK sends me the funnest pictures every morning because people have sort of departed from walking the streets. There's all these animals that have returned. He said there's goats at his neighbor's place. They're in southern England, but I just laugh at these pictures of goats going, well, there's nobody around. I guess I'll eat this.
Yeah, exactly. The goats, the monkeys. And, it's interesting because we really have formed these habitat bubbles, these cities that we live in. And, we've really scared a lot of nature away from us. And that's one of the things that we need to start thinking about is, the way in which we've carved these habitats, these cities, these strongholds that have separated us from the rest of the world. And I think people are starting to be really enchanted with the idea of seeing nature come back in right now and seeing this revival and seeing this connection again. And I hope we really continue to value it.
What are you seeing as someone who thinks in science and environmental things, and how are you seeing how it's affecting the globe, climate change, all those things? Like what's your observations on that?
Well, I think that we shouldn't be too premature in thinking that, we've lost a little bit of pollution and everything is going to be better again. Because in fact, in the past, I don't know if you remember that story that I shared in the book in China. It's about the APEC blue skies that they had there. So in 2014, China actually, they reached out to about 7 of the different regions, and they had this really remarkable grand plan for the country. They wanted to change the color of the sky, right? Because we all knew that China's skies were dark, they were polluted, they were gray. So basically, they enacted and enlisted about 500,000 people. They took about 11 million cars off the road. They stopped the factories. They had them on a rolling schedule. And guess what? Just for APEC, which was the Asia Pacific Economic Forum, when the world's eyes were going to be on China, there was no pollution. The skies had returned to this glorious blue, and people were like, oh my God, rejoice in the APEC blue skies. They hadn't seen blue skies like this. But what happened was very shortly after those orders were taken away, boom, there was a retaliation.
It was back.
Like, it went back even higher because all the industry started spiking up. So what's really important for us now then is to really deeply recognize that we don't want to return to that normal. As there was a sign of graffiti in Hong Kong that said, we don't want to return to normal. Normal was the problem in the first place.
Hello, everybody. I don't know what you did on that short break, but you're back with the Jann Arden podcast. My very special guest, Ziya Tong. Ziya and I have been, of course, speaking to the virus that is circulating the planet, but we just touched briefly on, environmental things and changes that are happening. But of course, going back to the way we were is something that we all have to take into consideration. We can't go back to how we were doing things because it's how we got into trouble in the first place. I want to speak just quickly to the wet markets that are where this originated from in China, which is, basically a farmer's market with a lot of different kinds of exotic animals. And of course, there's no refrigeration. Hygiene is questionable. That hasn't really, of course, people have talked about where the virus originated from, but we haven't really spoken to, listen, cruelty to animals is backfiring on us.
Well, being half Asian, right? A lot of people look at these wet markets with a real sense of horror. And when I look at wet markets, well, for me, it's a butcher shop. It looks the same to me. I see the same thing as I do when I really walk
Absolutely.
through a supermarket aisle, except Westerners are so used to, a lot of the dismembered bodies being inside of plastic wrap that it's like, oh, well, that looks perfectly okay. But, when you're seeing them hanging from hooks or whatever, perhaps it looks a little bit more gross or garish. And, I don't shy away from saying provocative things with you. And I hope that your viewers are okay with that. Forgive me, listeners. But that's the thing, right? People are often saying, oh, Chinese people, they eat dogs. And let me tell you, being a half Chinese person who grew up in Hong Kong, I have never eaten a dog in my life. And I never even had a chance to eat dog. I grew up there. I lived in Hong Kong the whole time, and I never opened up a menu and saw a dog. You know what I mean? So I think that it's really important to recognize that there are some stereotypes out there. In fact, most people don't realize that it's actually the Swiss actually eat dogs and cats.
Listen, I'm horrified by eating sweetbreads, which is it brains, testicles? There's so many things that, if it's beef tongue, I absolutely agree with you. There is no differentiation between, industrial protein farming in this country or any country. It is gruesome. It is quite violent. It is unkind. There's a lot of fear with the animals.
Well, that's the thing, right? We're seeing this moment where we're just relishing and rejoicing and seeing all these animals come up and into our habitat again, but we're still looking away from what we do to animals. And I think it's not even about, if we move away from the moment of talking about cruelty for a second and focus on the disease, the thing that really scares me about the way in which the West actually conducts a lot of its factory farming and its dealings with animals is that the same warning bells, the same sirens scientists have been putting out about antibiotic resistance, right?
Yes.
We pump a lot of antibiotics into farm animals, into pigs, into cows. Now, very recently, I was visiting a really good friend of mine in the Philippines, and her son, she's French, they had surgery. He'd had surgery for his spine in France. And while it was healing, he had developed basically, was having a problem healing, and he had basically a bacterial infection that the drugs couldn't treat, many different drugs. And that is because of this antibiotic resistance. And scientists are warning about this now because this is going to be far greater, even worse than what we're seeing. If we actually can't treat bacterial infections anymore, that will set us back hundreds of years, you know?
Yes.
So that's another important link that we need to start making about why it is that when we do eat animals, it starts to actually impact us, right? When we're cutting into their homes and the fringes of their lands, that's when you start getting, people start coming in contact with bats, with pangolins, and those viruses can start entering our own bodies.
What are your thoughts about those people that say human beings were meant to eat meat, we're carnivores, that they just don't, they see it as our divine right to lord ourselves over every other living thing on the planet. How do you speak to that?
Well, I think that everything about our evolution is really interesting, right? Like when we talk about becoming, we tend to think of evolution as only a technological evolution, like we're going to make more machines or we're going to build greater buildings. But what about the evolution of compassion? What about the evolution of kindness? What about those forms of evolution where we're actually more respectful to our fellow earthlings? We're only one of, 8 million different animal species here on Earth. And a lot of the trouble that we're getting ourselves into is we tend to see ourselves as, having dominion over everything. As you know in the book, we're the only species that believes that has the right to buy and sell life. What a silly idea that we can own life. But when you go into a supermarket, that's what you're actually looking at. You're looking at a price that has been paid on a body. And I think that's one of the key things that we need to kind of shift our thinking about. We don't have the right to own life. It's actually a very absurd notion.
Very, very well said. Lots of food sensitivity going on right now with people going in binge buying. The shelves have been cleared out several times in this last month with the quarantines and the self-isolation, physical distancing. And I think for the first time, people are really thinking about what they're eating. They're being really mindful. Even me, like, I'll throw this little bit of soup out. I'm like, I'm not throwing that soup out. I'll dump it onto a baked potato later. So
I think that's it's wonderful, right? We've all heard that from like our grandparents, this idea of like, I used to have to walk miles to get this, or, really a sense of valuing and not throwing out food and, quality and keeping things for a long time. And it's incredible that that's exactly what we're going through right now. It's, I don't know if you saw some of the videos on the internet, but not only are we seeing these incredible long lines, that go on for kilometers outside of Costco, we're also starting to see them for people who are lining up for food now, which we've never seen. Like those are the images that I've pictured in black and white during the Depression, seeing people line up at food banks. And so really this sense of not taking things for granted in the way that we used to, and really, as you said, making leftovers and, not throwing all of our stuff out. I think that we're going to come out of this with some really good lessons in some ways, some things that, you can't just sort of wag your finger and say, but that we're all sort of learning from the inside out.
I feel like there has to be some kind of a shift as to how we protect the planet. I think, meat will become less and less popular. I always liken it to smoking. In the 50s and 60s, there wasn't a person alive that didn't smoke because it just was. My mom said, well, I tried to learn how to smoke, but I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it because she wanted to be like everybody else. And I think, I'd love to see some of these really big celebrity chefs start making shifts. Like I used to watch cooking shows all the time, and Ziya, I can't do it anymore. I can't watch the amount of animals that are used in every dish. And so that's happened to me. And trust me, I ate turkey, ham, roast beef. I did it all. I used to buy a pound of shaved Black Forest ham and have it in my fridge. And I don't know, people are always like, you're being so judgmental, and I'm really not. I don't know why I didn't think about it sooner. I didn't.
Of course.
I was racing through my life, and then I just had a moment where I'm like, I cannot do this. My
Well,
heart's breaking.
There was actually a study, an odd study, but a study that was called Deaths Per Recipe. And it looked at all these famous Italian chefs, and it counted the number of animals per recipe. Because of course, it's not like each meal has one animal in it. Most meals actually contain many different animals. And it was strange. Before Anthony Bourdain passed away, I met him and I had a chat with him. He's a lovely fellow. He's traveled to many different places.
Yes.
He had actually said to me something strange at the time. We were just engaged in a chat, and he said, in many ways, in many cultures, in some cultures that he's visited, it's considered worse to eat a plate of shrimp than it is to eat a cow. And the reason for that is, of course, a cow is one life. A plate of shrimp, that's 30. And most people just it doesn't even register. And so, in the study that I'm telling you about, I think it was Mario Batali who was the biggest offender, because I can't remember, and don't quote me on this, but it was something like, 15, 12, 13 animals per meal that were going into this melange. It looks beautiful, but we're kind of, we're not, the key thing here, I think, which relates to the book, right, is we're living in a really fragile time. We have been living in a bubble. We haven't been seeing where our food comes from, where our energy comes from, and where our waste goes. And we're being shaken now to the core. And we're starting to look at that again. And we're starting to see more clearly.
There's, hope is not a strategy. And that's certainly not something I thought of. I've read that so many times with big CEOs of corporations. Hope's not a strategy. I'm going to leave these last couple minutes with you, because I know there's a quote that you want to read us. We have 1 minute to wrap up. What should people be doing? I know hope is part of it, but what's the best thing people can be doing right now?
Well, I think really there's a couple things. Kindness is one of the most important things. That's one of the things that we talked about. Creation is another. Use this time to bake, to share, to learn, to sing, to dance, to create in the face of destruction is incredibly powerful. To find a new form of patriotism, not a patriotism for war and all those sorts of things, but a new kind of patriotism that we're seeing for our helpers, for the people with the great dignity, all our essential workers, for our nurses, for our doctors, all those sorts of things. We've always heard people say, look for the helpers, and now we need to celebrate them. So I want to just share one last quote with you, if I might, and this is by a great political thinker named Wangari Maathai, and this is just a few words from her Nobel lecture that I'll end with. We're faced with a challenge that calls for a shift in our thinking so that humanity stops threatening its life support system. We are called to assist the earth to heal her wounds and in the process heal our own. Indeed, to embrace the whole creation in all its diversity, beauty, and wonder. This will happen if we see the need to revive our sense of belonging to a larger family of life with which we have shared our evolutionary process. In the course of history, there comes a time when humanity is called to shift to a new level of consciousness to reach a higher ground. A time when we have to shed our fear and give hope to each other. That time is now.
My guest has been Ziya Tong today. Thank you so much, Ziya. You have been listening to the Jann Arden podcast. Look after yourselves, everybody. Stay away from each other. Social distancing. We're climbing up the mountain. We're gonna get there, folks. Thanks so much for joining us today, Ziya.
Mwah.
Toodly-doo.